Hi, my name is Chris Burnett, and I'm with National Exchange Bank, and I work in the retail with the retail lending team. Today, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about banking basics. How does the Federal Reserve fit into the U.S. banking system? Although the Federal Reserve is often in the news, not everyone understands what it is and what it does. Perhaps the best way to clear things up is to have a Federal Reserve Q&A. We can cover some of the most common questions that people ask. What is the Federal Reserve? It is a central banking system of the United States. What does it do? In short, the answer is that the Federal Reserve is a bank for other banks, a bank for the U.S. government, and responsible for the U.S. monetary policy, which influences how much money and credit will be available to the U.S. economy. It also helps supervise and regulate banking institutions to ensure the safety and soundness of the nation's banking and financial systems. It protects the credit rights of the consumers and maintains the stability of the financial system by helping to contain risks that may arise in financial markets. When was the Federal Reserve established? Congress created the Federal Reserve System in 1913 to help make the U.S. banking system safer and more efficient. How many Federal Reserve banks are there? There are 12 Federal Reserve banks, and each of the 12 Reserve banks serves its own Federal Reserve District. Does the Federal Reserve set interest rates? The Federal Reserve is responsible for U.S. monetary policy. This means it makes policies that influence how much money and credit will be available to the U.S. economy. Interest rates often go up and down in response to the Federal Reserve's monetary policy decisions, but only the discount rate is set directly by the Federal Reserve. The discount rate is the rate the banks pay when they borrow from the Federal Reserve. Where's the headquarters for the Federal Reserve? The system's headquarters is in Washington, D.C. It is called the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. Does the Federal Reserve lend money to businesses and consumers? No, the Federal Reserve does not lend money to private borrowers, but it does sometimes lend money to banks when the need arises. Do all the Federal Reserve banks store gold bars in their vaults? Only the Federal Reserve Bank of New York has a working gold vault, and almost all the gold in that vault is foreign-owned. The U.S. government gold is held in Fort Knox, Kentucky, the U.S. Mints in Denver and Philadelphia, the San Francisco SA Office of U.S. Mint, and the U.S. Bullion Depository in West Point, New York. Is the Federal Reserve responsible for regulating and supervising the entire U.S. banking system? No, it's not. It actually shares that responsibility with other federal and state regulatory agencies. Does the Federal Reserve print U.S. paper money? No, although the Federal Reserve notes account for almost 100% of the U.S. paper money in circulation, the notes are actually printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, which is part of the U.S. Treasury Department. The printed money is then shipped to the Federal Reserve banks and their branches. When the banks need cash for their customers' needs, they order it from the Federal Reserve Bank in their district. Also, since money gradually wears out, the Federal Reserve banks process cash in order to determine its fitness. Worn-out bills are shredded, new bills are introduced into the system to replace the old ones. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this.